My name is Ava Miller, and for most of my adult life I believed that love was something you stayed inside of, even when it grew quiet, even when it stopped feeling like shelter and started feeling like habit. I believed commitment meant endurance, silence, patience, and the ability to convince yourself that discomfort was normal. I am 35 years old, a graphic designer by profession, and until not long ago I lived a life that looked complete from the outside and felt increasingly hollow from within. David and Aya lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas, in a modest ranch-style house on a tree-lined street not far from Zilker Park. The house had white window frames, a neat front lawn, and rose bushes that bloomed every spring, regardless of what was happening inside. Neighbors often commented on how peaceful it all looked. They used words like perfect and dream home. I used to smile and nod, because correcting them felt harder than letting the illusion live. David and I had been married for 16 years. We married young, the kind of young where love feels permanent, simply because you don't yet understand how fragile people can be. I was 19 when I said yes to him, in a small rural church, filled with familiar faces and folded hands. I remember standing there in my simple dress, my heart pounding, thinking that this was happiness, and that it would last forever because I wanted it to. David was 22, confident, charming, already chasing a future that felt exciting and big. He worked in the film industry, first in small behind-the-scenes roles, later as a production manager. His work came with long hours, constant travel, and stories that sounded glamorous to someone who had never lived beyond safe routines. In the beginning, I loved listening to those stories. I loved the way his eyes lit up when he talked about sets, actors, premieres. I loved feeling connected to that world through him. I believed that by supporting him, by waiting patiently at home, I was part of that world too. For a long time, that belief sustained me. But life doesn't usually break all at once. It frays slowly. It loosens thread by thread until one day you realize you're holding something thin and fragile that used to be strong. As the years passed, David traveled more, projects grew bigger, cities blurred together. His energy, once directed toward us, slowly began to flow outward. I stayed home more, building my own career as a graphic designer, working remotely for agencies around Austin. My days were filled with colors, layouts, branding campaigns, and deadlines, but also with long stretches of silence. We didn't have children. At first, it was a shared decision. We wanted to focus on our careers. Later, the conversation faded into something neither of us knew how to reopen. Sometimes I regretted it deeply. Other times, I felt relieved. The absence became another quiet space between us. On the surface, we functioned well. We ate dinner together. We shared routines. We laughed at familiar jokes. We knew each other's habits and preferences. But beneath all of that, something essential was missing. A sense of closeness, a feeling of safety, the certainty that I was still chosen, not just accommodated. The first undeniable crack appeared on a Saturday morning that should have been ordinary. I woke before David, sunlight spilling across the bedroom wall in soft golden stripes. He lay beside me, breathing evenly, his face relaxed in sleep. I watched him longer than usual, studying the familiar lines around his eyes, the shape of his mouth. I wondered if he ever lay awake thinking about us the way I did, if he ever felt the distance growing and chose to ignore it, or if he simply didn't notice at all. Eventually, I got out of bed quietly, wrapped myself in a robe, and went to the bathroom to clean. Cleaning had always been a grounding ritual for me, something tangible and controllable. I wiped the sink, scrubbed the mirror, then turned toward the shower. That's when I saw it, a single blonde hair clinging to the tile. It was thin, pale, almost translucent in the light, but unmistakably blonde. My hair was dark. David's hair was dark. We lived alone. I stood there holding my breath, my mind scrambling for explanations that didn't hurt. Maybe it had come from somewhere else. A guest, a towel, a coincidence. I told myself it meant nothing, but my hands trembled as I pulled it free and threw it away. That tiny, insignificant thing lodged itself in my thoughts like a splinter that refused to be ignored. But, from that moment on, doubt moved into my life quietly. It didn't announce itself. It didn't scream. It simply settled in and stayed. I started noticing things I had never paid attention to before. David placing his phone face down on the table, smiling faintly at messages he didn't explain, staying longer in the bathroom in the evenings, shaving more often, wearing cologne on days he said he'd only be at the office. Each detail alone meant nothing. Together, They formed a pattern I couldn't unsee. I didn't confront him, not yet. I wasn't ready to hear lies dressed up as reassurance. I needed clarity, something solid enough that it couldn't be twisted. Then there was the shampoo. I had used the same brand for years. A thick, dark liquid with a herbal scent David openly disliked. He had always had his own soap. Our shelves had been separate as long as I could remember. Two quiet territories that never overlap. One evening, I picked up my bottle and noticed it was lighter than it should have been. I frowned, shook it gently, then marked the levels subtly with my fingernail. Days passed. The bottle grew lighter again. Someone else was using it. The realization didn't make me cry. It didn't make me scream. Instead, something inside me went very still, calm, focused. I didn't want arguments. I didn't want denial. I wanted the truth, undeniable and clear. The idea came to me slowly, then all at once, like something I had always been capable of, but had never admitted. I altered the shampoo, adding a hair removal cream. When I placed the bottle back on the shelf, my reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, harder, older, awake. Days passed. I watched the bottle obsessively. Then one afternoon, I noticed it was significantly lighter. My heart pounded, but I didn't panic. I knew what it meant. That same week, the news exploded. A famous blonde actress appeared at a premiere with her head completely shaved. Cameras flashed. Reporters speculated endlessly. Medical reasons, artistic choices, scandal. I didn't need speculation. I knew. David grew quieter after that, avoided my eyes. His silences were louder than any confession. Finally, one evening, I placed the newspaper between us at the table. He stared at it for a long moment, then at me. Yes, he said softly, it happened. 16 years collapsed into a single moment. There was shouting, crying, accusations that tore through us like broken glass. Words were said that could never be taken back. But beneath all of it was something unexpected, relief. The truth was finally visible. The days that followed felt unreal. We moved through the house like strangers, passing each other without touching, without looking. At night, I lay awake listening to the silence where his explanations should have been, where my questions echoed unanswered. I replayed moments from our marriage, searching for the exact point where we lost each other, knowing I would never find a single answer. I filed for divorce quietly. The lawyer's office smelled like paper and coffee. The process was painful but clean, like a wound that had to be cut open to heal. My name appeared in newspapers after the story broke. Strangers judged me. Some condemned me. Others thanked me for speaking out. I learned quickly that truth is never quiet once it's released. In the months that followed, my life rearranged itself slowly and awkwardly. I learned how to sit alone without feeling abandoned. I learned how to sleep without listening for someone else's breathing. I learned how to look at my reflection and recognize the woman staring back. Some nights, the grief came in waves so strong I could barely breathe. Other days, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if I had been carrying a weight I hadn't known how to put down. Healing was not linear. It moved forward, backward, sideways, but it moved. I met a journalist named Mark while telling my story. He listened without trying to fix me. He didn't rush anything. He didn't offer solutions or promises. He simply showed up, again and again, with patience. I didn't fall in love immediately. I didn't trust easily, but I began to feel like myself again. A woman who could breathe. A woman who no longer mistook silence for peace. One evening, months later, I stood alone in my bathroom. The same place where everything had begun. I looked at my reflection and saw someone changed but not broken. Someone who had chosen herself, even when it hurt. Later, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was warm. The city hummed softly in the distance. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in pink and gold. I thought about the girl I had been at 19, full of certainty and hope. I thought about the woman I had become, scarred but awake. My life wasn't perfect. It never had been, but it was mine now, honestly and fully. God bless.